Hello? 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 Hey guys. Guy, apparently. It always takes a little time. Some of the regulars will show up. Okie doke. Let's see here. Okay, we're good. So, hi. Well, there's only like 2 or 3 of you here. Usually it takes, like I said, a little bit. A lot of stuff going on in my life. Some of it interesting, some of it not so much. Been working on some stuff for the channel. Trying to set it up here and there. For those that watch this as a VOD, remember right now if you DM me and you're interested in me like doing an interview about your kind of schizoid lifestyle and a couple questions about who you are and what you're about, if you care to do something like that, just DM me on Discord or email me. Discord's easiest though, so check it constantly. It could be with or without camera on, whatever works for you. But if you feel like you want to contribute to basically telling about your life experience as a person with schizoid personality disorder, I would highly suggest you do so with me. Yeah. Let's see here. Meds are still good. The higher Wellbutrin along with the fluoxetine without the Qelbree is doing wonders. I was feeling really bad on that stuff, so really happy to have that out of my system. For those that don't know about, I sometimes talk about my meds. Let's see here. Rib pain is back, but it's like a weird cartilage issue, so I just got to take a leave, like an old man with arthritis. I have to take a leave to alleviate it. What else? I'm trying to think what else. I like to cover the boring stuff first, because then it gives people a chance to like roll in here before I get into whatever it is I want to discuss a little further, a little deeper. So, I don't know, maybe it's going to be a slow day. I usually like to get going once there's like 4 or 5 people in. Which I'm surprised there isn't already. Then again, I'm usually 10 minutes after. I'm supposed to start at 7. I always start like at 7:10, 7:15 anyway, so I don't blame them. They're probably thinking, okay, I'm just gonna skip out the first 15 minutes. No, it ultimately makes sense. Oh, by the way, what I'm playing right now, audio-wise, for those that are into that kind of thing, I'm one of those. Just some cool stuff. For anyone interested, I put it in chat. There we go. Okay. I think it's a lag on the YouTube, like OBS thing. Okay, there's like 5 of you here now. All right, so I got this new shirt. I like it. I got a few new shirts. So it's like Mario 64, but with like Baphomet and shit. in which it's a Black Craft shirt. I thought it was adorable, so I got it. They had a special. I think it was like buy 4 shirts, 40% off original tag price, and they're pretty expensive. But I've noticed that they are really well crafted. The images stay after wash after wash. Ooh, I should be like, hey, sponsor me, Blackcraft, with my fucking 12 people. Anyway, some bad news for me is because the type of work I do is like contractor stuff. Because I do remote work with like AI shit, but it's like I'm not an employee. I'm like someone that's contracted, and so like, you know, shit can get really shaky really quick. And recently there's been like just like a lack of work because of like reasons, and every time this happens it's usually something that passes, but then like there's always that possibility they're gonna be like, oh, okay, we're making cuts, bye everybody, right? And because it's not like a W2 type job, it has its pros, cons is that there's no like PTO, there's no benefits, there's not a lot of things. And so when they say, you're sorry, there's no work right now, even though you're supposed to be doing this 40 hours a week, as you were told, it's kind of rough. Because you're like, shit, I'm going to have to make up this time on the weekends if they have work, or I'm just going to be out, right? And most of the reason I do this kind of work is because of my issues and my preferences. So it is a choice. I did a lot of like retail and just retail behind the scenes stuff and like person stuff, and you know, I just hated working with customers and things I did for years, and due to the agoraphobia and stuff, and basically it's a lot easier for me to work remotely, a lot easier and it's a lot better for mental health. So so it sucks because like it's really hard to get a remote job with this kind of stuff or certain kinds of stuff, and it be like a position that, like, you know, you get W2 or something, because a lot of these companies that do this kind of work, even though some of them do pay decently, they tend to hire globally, so they don't want to deal with having an employee or any of that kind of shit. What's funny though is that they offer like free like mental health like type services. They're like unlimited for people that work there, but what's just kind of like amusing is that like most of the stress is coming from the fact that you don't know what's around the corner all the time. And so if for some reason like they let you go, they just like, oh, you're off-boarded now, like you now lose access to that therapist they were letting you see about stress at work. It's pretty amusing, pretty grim. So yeah, imagine if that's what's stressing you out, and then you just like wake up the next day, and you know your big concern comes true, and you're asked out of the person you were allowed to see. I think it's like 10 times or something. Pretty crazy. But yeah, that's my life shit. So moving past that, what I wanted to discuss a bit is, if anybody wants to jump on here and discuss it with me, or just wants to chat it up a little bit with me, is the topic of schizoid sensitivity. It's just it's something that's been like often brought up, and it's something that like it took me a while to realize how actually like how sensitive a person I am. But it's weird. It's a strange thing. It's the reason it took so long is because I'm so unaware of it, and I'm so disconnected from that sensitivity, but it still exists. It's still there, and it's a lot of the reason why I probably ended up with these adaptations to begin with. One thing that was interesting is that even when I talk to various different psychs online and stuff, or chatted, or even like as you guys are seeing, like people like Greenberg and stuff, they've always said that like, oh, the schizoid tends to be it's kind of funny. I think even Greenberg pushed back a little bit on some of the like neurodivergency stuff that I mentioned, and they kind of insisted it's more about like an oversensitivity, or people that are oversensitive since children. And I think about it further, and I'm just like, who would be more oversensitive than neurodivergent kids? And who would be more prone to a bunch of those sensitivities being like bombarded on haphazardly without anyone really understanding why it's causing them harm or discomfort of sometimes traumatic levels. And so I'm actually like working on my schizoid adapts over a long time now, and experimenting with myself, essentially using myself as a guinea pig for a lot of thoughts, and bringing about certain types of discomforts inside of me for the sake of discovering more. I'm like finding more and more of the like how sensitive I actually am to certain things. And I think the sensitivity was always there. When I was a kid, I have a lot of weird memories of a lot of things bothering me, and then today I go like, why though? Like, it's so weird. Like, who cares? Like, why was that bothering me so much? Really strange, like fears and anxiety. Like, I was just a really scared kid. And over the course of years and into my teenage years, early teens, like my heart sort of hardened and hardened, to the point where like it was almost like my brain was trying to save me from these sensitivities to, oftentimes in my case, pretty idiosyncratic stuff. And so when you keep getting like hurt, and the world around you doesn't acknowledge it, dismisses it, or has no actual tools to relieve you of anything, your brain essentially, I mean, it doesn't literally make a choice, but your brain, in its self-preservation, has to make that decision of, well, I guess it's time to stop the feelings. Gotta keep that shit separated, because you're just so goddamn anxious and so goddamn depressed or sad or just scared little kid. And when I brought this up to I brought it up like at least twice in to like a few people, a few Zoids on the server, and I've had a few chat discussions or whatever, with a few people, and they all seem to kind of agree under that thing about, because like when I say sensitive, right, sensitivity, I think in the mind of a lot of schizoids, it's they're perceiving like interpersonal sensitivities, or they're thinking they might be thinking I'm talking about that, but I am not talking about that in the least. It is not about rejection sensitivity, or about sensitivity to, I don't know, a lot of the stuff that you would assume a sensitive person is talking about. Like if you go, oh, that person's really sensitive, you just assume like, oh, yeah, any kind of like criticism, oh, or any kind of conflict, they're like, oh, they'll cry or something, right? Um, that's not what I'm talking about when I'm saying sensitivity. I'm talking about like those very unique, idiosyncratic sensitivities. Like, an example would be like somebody that is incredibly sensitive to, um, the suffering of animals, right? Let's just say they're very, very, very intensely sensitive to that, and they go as far as, eventually deciding to, stop eating meat or become vegan or whatever, and because of that level of sensitivity, and then living in a society that basically revolves around like a bunch of stuff like meat production, and then seeing that there's nothing they can do to stop it or whatever, like that's a lot of like that's a lot of really kind of anguish that person's going to endure. Or something else like a sensitivity to, just the overall destruction of nature, a sensitivity to, upholding like absurd societal-wide logical fallacies, a sensitivity to literally to like conventional interpersonal communication. Um, Somebody might think like, "Oh, I hate small talk," you know, but I mean, there's some people where small talk, it's not just annoying. It's like it's like there's an aversion to it. It's like, well, what is this? Like, stop, please. And so there's all these kind of unconventional sensitivities that I think the schizoid early in life was very much prone to. Oftentimes, like, I've heard stories about schizoids having like, not always obviously, but having like conventionally traumatic pasts, whether it was, stuff like myself and a CSA, or like having parents that like beat the shit out of each other or scream and fight all the time, and or were like narcissistic and abusive toward them growing up. Like, what's interesting is that like oftentimes they talk about those things like when they talk about it in the present, they talk about it like, oh, this is just stuff that happened, right? And yeah, that's what it may be now, but it's hard to recollect how you actually might have felt, at age 7, at age 6, or before that, obviously, about certain circumstances in your household or in your environment, or in or in just your culture, right? Depending on where you're from, and then having these kind of even odd takes on their own, like what would be kind of more conventionally traumatic for a child to be around. Even then, like there was a sensitivity to certain aspects of it that are kind of, I guess, odd. A lot of confusion and anxiety, with like no support, like no actual support system that would make sense to that neurodivergent kid. Nowadays, maybe they can find something, so that's good. But yeah, it's just weird because at a certain point, from when I was a little kid to when I was like becoming a teen, adolescence hit, like it just something I went from like just being like scared a lot and anxious a lot to like about everything and anything, and kind of like confused and anxious all the time, to like feeling just feeling numb, just being numb to it. And that's when like the whole going through the motions, eventually the masking, everything else developed further and further. And I got further and further away from these sensitivities. And it's interesting too, because like there were times that I can remember, especially as a teenager, where that sensitivity levee would break, and so the numbness like would recede temporarily, and I would have like this just a bombardment of emotion, which I was not prepared for, and was not equipped to deal with. And so it usually come out in the form of like anger. So I would like I would break my possessions or something. I would break something I cared about. I would just break it. It's like a weird form of psychological, I don't know, self-harm or something. But or I would just like I would break something and like that I know somebody in my family would see, and then they would get pissed or whatever, and I just feel nothing about them being pissed about it. But at some point, like the numbness became like stronger. By age 20, it was just like way up there, or 20, now 25. Like the more emotional outbursts like happened less and less, but when they did, they were just as potent. Even if they were only like every couple of months. I've noticed that I can access, and it's kind of scary, I can access those sensitivities when I drink, which is like depressing. Like it's really hard for me to access the sensitivity without alcohol in my blood. And it's like whatever safety measures and like unconscious sort of barriers that keep me from accessing it because it's just too much. They obviously like they get kind of wispy and stuff when I'm like drunk, and it's kind of fucked. Hold on, 1 second. Yeah, for the regulars, that's just my 4-year-old coming in to say goodnight. But wait, sometimes there's a delay there. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, okay. That was just the 4-year-old coming to say goodnight as usual. For those that watch me know about that shit. It happens every time. I'll never not say goodnight because I have to stream to her. It's fucking absurd. But yeah. When I drink, I can kind of gain access to it. I'm probably not the only schizoid out there that, like, if they are inebriated, it allows them to kind of touch that sensitivity easier. I remember, this is a weird story. I remember I think I was probably like, I don't know, 17, 18. I can't remember. It was probably toward the end. Either it was toward the end of or right after, like, senior year of high school. I remember I was with, I don't know if at the time they still were, we were just friends or something. But I remember what was my girlfriend at the time Um, and they were very socially anxious, but more of like an avoidant type situation. I remember I was having like one of these meltdowns, um, and I have memories of like what it was about, which was I liked reading a lot of fiction, and I still could do, but I don't read as much, just books. I mean, fiction as I used to, mostly sticking in nonfiction half the time now. But I was just like reading, and I would read a lot of just kind of like fantasy and stuff like that, and I was just like really, really overwhelmed by like life, my existence, not knowing what direction I was going to take anything, everything feeling like anything interesting that I want to do, feeling impossible to achieve. The weight and pressure of like, you know, being with a family all the time that I feel completely disconnected from. Uh, both it's just in every way, shape, and form. And then the world being so fucking scary, existence being so scary, a lot of existential sort of catastrophizing, I guess would be a pretty good way to put it, that I was doing. And I remembered that I was feeling particularly um suicidal, and I was yelling at her, but not. I wasn't yelling at her. I was yelling at like it could have been anybody in front of me. But I was yelling like about how books and the stories I read, how they're the rhyme and reason for that existence. And this is pre like my kind of expansion into the optimistic nihilism that kind of saved me in many ways. Um, and I was ranting and raving about how like when an author writes a book, right, when he sets a set of rules about and reasons for why the characters in the story exist and the world that they live in exists and how it's structured, whether there's gods or a pantheon or whatever, what have you. Like there are rules and there are like assurances, right? That they themselves might not even be aware of the characters, right? But those assurances are there because essentially the author is the god of that world, right? He decides this is what happens and this is how it works. And there's really, I mean, outside of just a bunch of headcanon, that's kind of how it goes. Whatever you put to paper, that is what it is within the context of what you put to paper. And I remember just yelling and pointing at the book and just like I was like punching a copy of what was it? I was like, yeah, I think it was an old set of, because I read them as a kid. It was just an old set of Chronicles of the old Chronicles of Narnia. Or was it the Chronicles of Prydain? I don't know. But anyway, I was just fucking like I was just like, why can't it be like this? Like, and like I fucking threw the book, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, what the fuck is this life? Like, why am I just cursed to wander blind and confused and not connect to anything or anyone and not have any answers and blah blah blah, and like, and I think I had like a, I feel bad about this part because that must have been really scary for them. But I remember I think I grabbed what was like either some kind of razor, straight razor, or like a box cutter, and I was like basically saying like I should just fucking, like, why am I such a pussy? I should just fucking do it. This story is never gonna end well, and and I was just like, and yeah, it was like, yeah, that was pretty close to kind of a psychosis or something. I was just like fucking like I was like it was a combination of horribly terrified and also just angry at being alive or ever being born and such. Um, and I was just angry that like these stories and all the fiction that I enjoyed, there was structure and rhyme and reason, and there were rules that you could work with that had answers that were finite, and here I was in like this infinite expanse of questions and with no assurance of any kind about anything, right? And I think like the average person might find assurance in like it reminds me of that old Tool song, but I don't remember which song, but it's just basically talking about like being held in someone's arms and how like even if the world or life doesn't make too much sense, the only thing you can be sure about is that you feel safe and warm in like that person's arms or something. But like that feels real, that connection. But I didn't have that either, right? I didn't have that with the person that was, I guess my girlfriend at the time, and I didn't have that with my family. I didn't have that with anyone. I didn't have an anchor, right? To kind of anchor and ground um, this kind of internal sensitivity. Because like I had that episode, and then by the next day I kind of just went back to my mostly stoic personality, and I even had trouble like recollecting why I had gotten so crazy. Um, but yeah, and so I'm wondering if I love my demo. There's like 15 people, but nothing in chat. It's hilarious. Um, I'm wondering if any of you guys understand what I'm talking about. That sort of sensitivity, like that extreme childhood sensitivity to like not like, oh, when daddy raises his voice at me or when mommy says she's disappointed. Like usually it won't be those kinds of sensitivities. It'll just be some other type of shit. Like even if it's just like like trying to navigate conversation or trying to understand why people do what they do, trying to understand like if you grew up in a religious family, trying to like work that shit out in your head and being like overly concerned about like the stuff they were telling you about, I don't know, hell or sin or whatever, and then just being like fucking a shivering frightened fucking child that was having fucking nightmares. um yeah, that limerence stuff is fucking rough. I don't deal with that one too much, but I've read into it, and I can see how that could have been a path that might have been mine. But yeah, it's so fucking wild that like we've like even the schizoid has like psychologically, and it's not their fault, but a lot of us have kind of gaslit ourselves into thinking that we were never sensitive. It was always like this. We were always like this. And then, those bouts where like I said, the levee breaks and you just fucking have like a meltdown. Those are just hiccups. It must have been the medication. It must have been I don't know, like something I must have had gas that day. Uh, and a lot of the times, this is what's interesting. I find those episodes, right? Like where a schizoid, you go weeks and weeks and weeks and months of just kind of like, and it's floating in it. And then you have this thing, like this, some event happens, some stressor, right? Your stress levels, like of something you are not, of something that isn't under your control, you can't do anything about, like goes up a lot, and then that kind of makes it so that like a lot of the defenses sort of just start fucking breaking apart temporarily. And while you're freaking out, it's scrambling to like build them back up. And one feeling I experience a bunch of times, I don't know if you guys can relate, but when those events happened, I remember feeling like angry at myself, ashamed at myself. And it's like just looking back at how I was behaving, whether I was just like sobbing uncontrollably by myself. I'll look back at it like when the walls and stuff are good again, and I'll just be like I'll just see myself as fucking pathetic, like fucking weak bitch. What are you doing? That doesn't solve anything. What do you care? You know it's always been this way. Why are you crying about it now? It's absurd. And shit like that. I tell myself stuff like that. You're just making yourself vulnerable and weak for, opportunistic exploiters to like fuck with you. The world has nothing for you to offer you, so what are you complaining? You already know this, like, why are you crying and bitching about it? And yeah, I remember kind of like talking to myself like that, feeling like that. Like, this isn't practical, this isn't useful. If somebody finds out, they're going to think you're crazy because they wouldn't understand the reasons for your meltdown. Hell, I don't even understand them sometimes, like that, those kinds of thoughts. Mine was intuitively understanding things I shouldn't have, but not being able to explain it to even myself. Also, extremely empathetic, especially with my mom. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, even when I was like at my most shit heel in my 20s, I was like a little dickhead in my high school years of just fucking like complete misanthropy, right? I was still like, I would watch like a movie or something and it would just hit the right note, and then I would just sit there like just in a daze, and I would just feel so much. And but I would also just be like, what is this? Like, why did this have such an effect on me? This narrative that I just watched, this story. Why did it have such an impact on my psyche? And I mean, yeah, it was weird because like, if I would have heard that same story from a person that was telling me that story, and it, like, say it happened to them, I especially at the time, I wouldn't have felt anything really. I would have just been like, I would have just thought like, that's tragic and that should not have happened, and what kind of stuff can we do in the future to avoid such a thing occurring again? Like, that's all that would kind of be going through my head. But yet when I saw it play out outside of me in a safe environment, meaning by myself in my room watching something, like, since a lot of these other parameters weren't there, like, I was able to like, it was able to sneak its way through, smuggle in some of the feelings and connection to my feelings. And I feel like a lot of the feelings are always like there, like that sensitivity to and empathy towards certain things, it's always there. It's just I can't access the feelings associated with it because of the Zoid adapts. But at the same time, it's like kind of good because I I would probably be a completely dysfunctional mess if I had full access to it. I like that now I'm able to, with all the work I've done on myself and everything, now I'm able to sort of turn that switch on and off a lot easier as needed. So if I want to feel the good thing or the bad thing, depending on what it is, I can. But I'm just glad I can like also shut some of it out, because I know that some of it would be considered unreasonable by most to be something that would make you just crippled with depression or anxious as hell, because it would be something that's like, well, you still gotta get moving, you still gotta go on, you still gotta get going, you have people in your life to take care of. So like I'm glad I can like shut some of it out and kind of, and then sort of process it after. um so that's kind of what I've been doing to like make these sort of big meltdowns not happen as much, though I can't avoid them as easily. When I drink, I get stupid, but sometimes I also get really, anyway, I'm not gonna talk about that. But it was just this like I process, like, how do I explain this? I know a bunch of emotional shit happened. I know I could feel my body being very stressed, very angry, very sad, but I couldn't like pinpoint. It was just like my body felt tired and shitty and anxious and just bad. But I couldn't like really be like, this is why and this is why. So instead of just kind of like being like, oh, this is annoying, I don't know what this is, and then once it like fades into the background, just being like, okay, good, it's gone. I actually like, once I allow myself to think about it and process it chunk by chunk, and allow myself to feel, or work hard to feel, what I was supposed to feel when it was happening. And then if I kind of consciously try to process bits of it, the big fucking dam breaking episodes don't seem to happen as often. Obviously the medication helps too, but I feel like a lot of schizoids would probably be, I'm not saying they'd be happy, but they'd probably be a lot less unsure about a lot of stuff, or anxious if you're the anxious type. If um, if they just kind of accepted this sensitivity, and that it actually exists, and that's okay. That it doesn't make you weak, it doesn't make you exploitable. You can handle it your way, in your privacy, how you want. Your autonomy. You have the choice of not doing anything with it and just navigating those occasional breakdowns. But I don't know, that's not my advice, to do it like that, if that's how you've always done it, because that's how I did it for a few decades. And yeah, I could have been a lot better mental health wise if I had somebody to give me this advice, or talk to me about it, or mention it as a possibility. It all came to a screeching halt finally at 15 with the Great Divide, when I finally gave up and just surrendered to a bare bones survival. Yeah, yeah. You know, there's like there's stories I hear from Zoids, like they'll tell me like, oh, it's a certain time of the year where like I don't know why, but like I go into this like month-long depression. But then like after it's over, I just go back to feeling kind of numb for like the rest of the year. Like they'll have it like that. My shit's more sporadic. Bro, I remember finding your channel and server when I was having a psychosis. Wow, cool, man. I'm glad you're still around. Yeah, I feel like I have to do like a video or something on this, kind of explaining what I just said, because I think it's like incredibly important. And like that's that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, even if like you're not, oh shit, yeah, well it's been a while. Even if you're not down to like obviously like um, talk to a psych or a therapist or like about this, about these sensitivities for obvious defense reasons and such, or to tell even like a family member or a loved one or anybody for that matter, even me if it's anonymous, like say for like a submission, you just know no one's gonna, I'm not telling anyone about these like secret sensitivities that I have that I'm kind of disgusted by or wish I could just remove entirely. I almost have an animosity toward those times. um I think the first step to making some kind of progress when it comes to this stuff is just accepting to yourself that it's there, that you're not just some, I mean, I don't think anybody really thinks that, but you're not just some stoic badass ubermensch, right? That like just thinks like logic and reason only. It's like, no, that shit's cope. That shit's cope as fuck. So I think fighting yourself less about this. Chunk by chunk. Yep, chunk by chunk. Chunk chocolate chip cookie, or whatever the Costco crack. Anyway, um, but the it's just that it's like accepting that aspect of yourself, and if you never take the step to tell anybody about that acceptance or that understanding, that's your decision, and I ain't gonna say shit. But I think at bare minimum, I think if the schizoid wants to just work on themselves by themselves, that's gonna be like a big step. And um it's funny because this is like a step that I've been working toward taking more and more of, and I have been extremely, and it's been pretty successful for me. But it's been rough. It's been rough for the last 2 years or so. So try it. I mean, if you're anything like I was, where everything felt pretty just pointless and hopeless and numb, and you're like the type that's like, well, I'm probably not gonna live past 50, or for whatever reason. Um, well, what do you have to lose at that point? And kind of search that part of yourself and look into it. Sit down with one of the easiest ways, right, would be to, if you talk to family members or anything like that, still just ask them, tell them, tell you stories about you when you were a kid and what you did, how you talked, and ask them about questions about like, oh, what kind of stuff bothered me as a kid. You might hear interesting stuff. You might find out what some of those sensitivities that you currently struggle with secretly, where they might have started, or where they came from. But you don't have to tell them you're doing that, right? Like, if you can just be like, hey, uncle, mom, dad, whatever is available to you, old friend or neighbor that's been around forever. Like, hey, what do you remember? I'm curious. It's like, and if they ask you why, she'd be like, I don't know, just been wondering about stuff like that happened, because my memory is just a little foggy about it. I'm just curious. I don't know, some shit like that. I don't know, however you want to handle it. So it might trigger some memories that you can then like mull over and think about, like, okay, why would another really easy thing you can do, I've been doing this, but I don't know, but like it's like a weird thought experiment where like you use your cognitive empathy on yourself. um so you you if there was like a traumatic event that you're just kind of like numb to now, or you just have like this weird discomfort with, but you just like, like you've always said, I just gotta move on. What the fuck am I doing? Something like that. Think about how you would feel about a hearing a child that isn't you tell you that happened to them. Do that. And you might feel a little less numb about it. You might feel a little less numb about it. And I did this, and for me it was quite something, because for some of you that know me or watch my stuff, you already know that like there's a certain topic or subject matter that like I get very angry, and I'm pretty like unreasonable, quote unquote, um in my positions, and that has to do with like, people hurting physically, emotionally, or sexually, like abusing kids and stuff. And um and it was interesting because like, I had shit like that happen to me, but when I would look back at my stuff, it would just be like, oh well, that's a thing that happened, and it's confusing, but what can you do? And, that's kind of my thoughts on my own trauma or whatever. And then, but then like I have this incredible sensitivity to any news, any things. I don't stay away from it because I'm fucking psycho. But any news, any kind of videos, any kind of literature on that subject, and hearing about it, and even if it's like a true crime thing that's going around, that's being talked about, whatever. And I'm like, why is it that I'm like so fucking sensitive to these occurrences when they're not about me? And so then I did that. I thought about what happened to me, and then I imagined hearing that, or imagined a child telling me that happened to them. And it just absolutely fucked me up. So careful with that one. But I'm just saying. And if you feel like, oh fuck, I can't, no, like I'm not saying just do a fucking deep dive. I'm saying like that might be a way to start processing some stuff, since it's so hard to like for us to be empathetic to ourselves or our needs and stuff, or even aware of them. Lights are coming on now. I have certain sensitivities. Yeah, I think most schizoids are really like, they're just like, I think they would hate being told this. They would hate acknowledging it, but I think most schizoids are incredibly sensitive people, and they're just constantly in battle with themselves to not be, and to like in battle with themselves of like feeling numb, but also knowing the numbness is keeping something away, something dreadful away. So it's like a kind of a catch-22 in many ways that they're living.
I think an aspect of sensitivity that is a struggle for coming in, like feeling a lot of the sensitivity, for me at least, would be I've noticed recently that I tend to gravitate towards a lot of negative things,
Yeah.
whether that just be negative space or just negativity in general. For
Mhm.
example, like the most easiest example I can give of this is while someone might answer a phone number that they don't recognize because they might find it interesting or it's like some useful thing that whatever, my first thought was, what if someone's trying to call a random number and they need help? And if I don't answer it, then that kind of fucks them over, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, that's really weird and really like you can just call 911. That's much faster and it's so much more useful. But I'm trying to like build a platform of these are the kind of thoughts I gravitate to first. So when it comes to allowing myself to be sensitive or to understand that I am sensitive, my thoughts will naturally gravitate towards constructing people that I inherently distrust, which kind of builds some walls to feeling out these emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I can't really do that if I'm around people I don't trust. That's like the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're able to, instead of imagining negative scenarios, which probably are just scenarios from your past, imagine a scenario in which someone would be positive in a way that makes sense to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I think a good example, like you were talking about earlier, Angst, was imagining a child saying the same things you are, but also imagining how you would interact with a child like that. Especially if, like, say you're interacting with yourself, that's a child saying that, right?
So you could do the same thing for positive ideas about like what it is you need and want. You basically would look at what your kind of cognitive empathy and your sort of ethics and morality or whatever you want to call it toward how a child like that should be treated, and what would be fair in your mind, and then find that those very things you're saying would be applicable to you as well, and that could have been something you could have used.
It's almost like you're playing devil's advocate, but for, like, the concept of hope.
Angel's advocate.
Pretty much.
Well, devil's an angel, but I guess it would be, I don't know what we would call it.
I think what's helped a couple of other Zoids I've noticed express themselves is imagining themselves as a child. It kind of like creates a closed loop where you can still feel things out because it doesn't feel so dangerous because it still feels like yourself.
Mm.
But imagining the child still invokes a little bit different response than imagining you in the mirror.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's why I think the better step is to imagine, well, depending on your capabilities or whatever, the better step is to imagine a child that isn't you, because of kind of that aversion and those barriers that usually exist. So, but then to intellectually understand first that obviously all these kind of feelings that you would kind of, that would, be in your head or whatever about this child telling you these things, that they're applicable to you and you have to apply them to yourself. And then it's sort of like a way of being able to feel the weight to whatever degree of that, like, of that pain, of that sorrow, of that trauma that you might have endured. And again, it could be something that other people might not think is a big deal, but for whatever reason it was for you, especially since, like, you're a neurodivergent kid or something, and who cares? Like, imagine another kid saying that they're really, really hurt or scared about this thing. Would you scoff? Would you tell them it's fine, they're imagining things, it's just whatever? No, you probably wouldn't say any of those things. So yeah. Just thinking about that. It's heavy shit. It really is heavy shit. But it's a personal journey and stuff. But there are places to discuss your progress with these things, and one of those places is the Zoid Void. So those are places where you can be like, I tried this, I tried that. I'm trying to figure out what I'm sensitive to, and have those kinds of discussions more or less anonymously on the interwebs.
I find that even in communicating with other schizoids, it can be challenging because for reasons that stated already. But it's challenging in a way that by the end of the emotional burst I was feeling, it feels productive. Like it feels like something moved forward. So even though it's challenging, it's not just suffering.
Yeah.
Pointless suffering.
No, it's productive suffering. Right?
Okay. It's not always suffering, but even when it's hard, it still feels productive.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it still feels like I moved forward a little bit, even though it was hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this in combination with the understanding that neurodivergent peeps are going to be the ones that are most prone to this sort of situation, and so thus a good majority of schizoids are probably in some way like that, and combining that with understanding this sort of level of sensitivity that might have existed. You could argue it existed, it was developed, or you can, unlikely, you could have just been born a sensitive child. It's something that's discussed often in neurological literature regarding babies and stuff like that. And if those sensitivities, if you're already a sensitive child, and those sensitivities can't be met, even more so because they were of an unconventional nature. Um, yeah, yeah. It's probably one of the few ways the that person or that the brain can salvage its own sanity, keep it together somehow. I'm just reading some of the chat. I don't think I see anything new there, but it looks like it's resonating with some folks. Man. Yeah, and the reason a lot of this came up in my head too is because, like, I've been discussing with my psych, like, why I'm so dedicated and just like why I'm so dedicated and so interested in wanting to help other schizoids and stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's like it's a method of attempting to come to terms with my own like path and all this, but also understand that it's kind of like doing the same thing. I wish I would have found that understanding of relatability in my 20s instead of finding it in my late 30s. Almost 40. I'm 40 now, but instead of finding it then, it's kind of crazy. Like, and then like these lessons and these ideas that I'm learning now and how to actually apply more practically to myself. I have just this need to share them because I'm hoping somebody can do better than me that is currently like in their 20s, and so they could be in a better place by the time they're my age. Not being a fucking emotional drunk.
I think what makes my sense of moral justice so strong, and that it's manifested in this regard as well, is that as a child, there was a lot of fantastical imaginations that have come to me intuitively that helped me through a lot of my life in lieu of any other role model. And in kind of like an interesting future past scenario, it's like I want to become the person that helped me out when I was a kid, but that person I also
Yeah.
recognize is myself. Like it already happened, but now I'm just continuing the time loop almost.
Yeah.
Funny.
That's a really interesting way to put it. That you're trying to help yourself. You're trying to help your kid self. Your sensitivities are tied to your child self. But like it's interesting because like you know a schizoid might like work toward or do things or believe in things that would ultimately would have been like incredibly helpful or um useful to that child version of themselves, but they haven't really quite connected those two aspects. Like they haven't connected that these like sensitivities that they have for something like I don't know anything uh from you know sensitivities to certain music tonality and like all this sort of stuff and the emotions it evokes, some you know just really kind of little things like that. There might be some child inside you that that's what was hurting them about their interaction with the world the most, and just failing to make that connection, I think, is very common. Very, very common. So I already did. By the way, just a little behind the scenes. I already did 2 interviews, which will eventually be uploaded as the Schizoid quests on the channel. So look forward to that. But I kind of want to record like 4 of them before I put out even the first one, because I don't think any of the questions I ask are like super. Well, see, that's the thing. Yeah. I think some of the questions that I ask could be super heavy, especially the last few. Could be super heavy questions for some schizoids, and that's why I say that like I literally tell anybody that if there's anything they don't want to answer, all they have to do is say nope, and I'll just move on. But yeah. So we'll see if I don't want to put out like the first one right away, and then like that'll make people not want to, you know, try this. And it's nothing scary. It's just it falls in line with like the whole like certain types of sensitivities that schizoids may have that basically would require them, for the purposes of such an interview, to expose more like vulnerable parts of their internal existence to some degree. So but it depends. I don't know. Some zoids have an easier time doing it because they just kind of talk about themselves really clinically, and other times that's not a conversation that's going to be had, especially not while being recorded. All right. I don't know. I think I said all I had to say on the subject. I don't know if anybody in chat has questions. Self-parentification. Yeah, in many ways, yeah.
I feel like you can apply that concept broadly to pretty much any personality disorder, in my opinion.
Yeah, probably. In many ways. No, for sure. It just each of those disorders would take on a very different approach as to how to kind of do this kind of self-parentification. I mean, because you already, like, most schizoids already did parent themselves.
In many ways, yes.
So, it's not like it's something new.
In some ways,
no,
not
at all. Yeah, 0.
Not even slight.
Yeah, but
that's kind of the point, right? It's supposed to be, when it comes to, you know, even if I'm talking about schizoid, when it comes to a personality disorder, there are aspects of yourself that don't like, for lack of a better way of expressing it, go through puberty. They don't grow up with you, but other parts do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the disorder. It's the dissonance between the two aspects.
Yeah, I just like imagined like it's kind of like if remedial self-parenting. It's kind of like if you had a parent, if your parent, like most schizoids, if they were parenting themselves, they were that parent to themselves of like you know uh walk it off, you're fine, it's whatever, you know, like what are you crying about, kid? Like it's this and that, and stop it. Like you knew this was gonna happen. You know this is how people are. What are you crying about? And I feel like that's at least in my case, that was like the parent I had. It like when it comes to me, the way I parented, not my actual dad, but the way I parented myself, it was kind of like that. You need to survive. You need to navigate this. Fight that. Fight it. Fight it. Fight them. You know. So, and that was like I had a far more hostile approach. That's what made me more misanthropic. But...
I mean, I think you can still extrapolate that to a lot of Zoids, because you can say that in that hostility to yourself, it was an attempt to numb the sensitivities that were, because you would see your own sensitivity and like connection to the external world as the problem.
Yeah.
So it was just the only way you understood how to cut that off.
Yep. 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 Yep.
So it's not wholly based on self-worth and feelings of inadequacy. It can also be fear and just general confusion because of that connection to the external world not making sense, or just causing so many problems that it feels like a necessity to cut off.
Yeah. Okay, well, I have really quick. If there are any Zoid out there that listens to these streams, remember they end up as a VOD. And if for some reason you thought, oh man, this guy said some useful shit, or either of us did, remember you're always welcome to download the stream, since they're only like an hour and a half. And if you want to fucking edit that little sucker up, I'll put it on my channel. Because I feel like sometimes when I say stuff off the cuff on a stream, it's a lot better than if I try to sit there and like say it again. I feel like it never comes out quite right. So yeah, if anybody interested in doing that, shoot me an email, send me a DM, whatever. If you found this like topic and some of the stuff I said, you think it would be really useful to put it somewhere where it's more visible on my channel. Aside from that, Shadow, is there anything else you wanted to add to this, Saintus? I know you were just mostly listening.
That's all I got.
Is there anything you wanted to add to this today?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, then in that case, guys, oh, no problem, Pickle Dissonance. If you like the work I'm doing, and I'm not just doing streams, and also doing some other nonprofit shit that's taking forever because of reasons, but starting to finally kick off since summer ended. If you want to support me, please do so on Patreon. It's probably the best way to do it, or just direct PayPal. The money basically just goes to like paying for little bills and shit that I have here, my own mental health. So in other words, what's the word? Being able to like pay for like, I don't know, like a stupid service that lets me, I don't know, make thumbnails, and or service that lets me or lets me buy, because I gotta change the fucking template for this thing. It's so boring. I gotta sit down.
livelihood that encourages you to actually want to live life more.
Yeah, that's the lame way to put it. But in any case,
That's the autistic way to put it.
Toby Walker, hey, I don't know, is that you clicking all those? If you missed it, Toby, go ahead and watch it as a VOD after, if you're into this sort of subject. I think it was a pretty good one. Oh, and remember, if you're on the server and you want to do some like one-on-ones with me, I don't charge a crazy amount for my time, and I feel like I made enough progress. I understand this. I've already did stuff like group coaching and stuff. If you want to do some one-on-one type stuff, we can schedule some time and do some Zoid coaching type shit to discuss more practical matters, how to navigate this or that, or how to deal with some aspects like anhedonia and avolition, and things like that. If you want to if you need that, hit me up on Discord and we could set up something. And even if it's a one-time thing, or if it's something you want to do every so often randomly, or you want to set it, say the first one works out really good for you and you want to do it, yeah, just hit me up. Because I am not a therapist. But you don't need credentials to be a life coach. So, but I am not a therapist. All right then. Peace out, guys. And as usual, when day is dark, always remember, happy day.